Hey, Ben, I remember a few months back when my kid came to me, who is a pitcher. He's 10 years old, and he came to me saying that he was starting to have discomfort in his elbow, aka growth plate. And that's when I hit up my buddy, the creator of the kinetic arm. And I brought my son in there, and he gave my son the K2, the youth version.
The kinetic arm sleeve is the first and only athletic sleeve designed to stabilize the shoulder and the elbow while throwing and swinging. So I can see how that was both preventative for him, took a little pain away, and then also helped him heal and recover.
And it helps their mechanics. His form's better.
The kinetic arm, there's really nothing like it. It goes beyond compression, and it's actually proven to reduce arm stress. It is the only movement arm brace that functionally stabilizes the arm while in motion. And that's really where you get the damage, is by repetitively doing the same thing over and over again.
I don't know how it works exactly, but I do know it works. So check it out. You can go to thekинeticarm.com, use promo code ManFUzed, ManFUzed. You'll get 10% off that way. Or you can get the link in our episode descriptions on the podcast. Hey, this is the ManFUzed Podcast. Kay Lee here, your host, my co-host, Ben H.
What's up?
Sitting here in a... would you call that like a mustard-colored coat?
Camel.
That's what it is. Camel.
It matches my chicken boots.
Chicken boots, they are. You know what your outfit is missing? You are not accessorized with your man purse. Where is the man purse?
I think it was just like,
honestly, is that a fad?
I think the whole thing about purses and guys is it does make more sense. It is a lot more convenient. It doesn't click.
Not something that you embrace for the long term.
I just think it's very unnatural. Over time, you just go back to putting shit in your pockets without thinking about it. Like my purse is still in my truck.
Instead of going, oh my God, let me get my purse.
Yes.
Honey, have you seen my purse? So today on the ManFUzed Podcast, we're going to kind of go a little dark. We're going to talk about torture in the ancient world. And is it really any different than what's going on currently? Granted, some of the tactics might have changed, but it's all horrific. So Ben, you went down a wormhole yesterday.
Yeah, I did.
Torture.
I went down a wormhole last night about ancient torture methods.
Now, before you say another word, why? What made you? Did you see something on it and then get captivated, click on it, read, and then you just went deeper?
Dude, a friend of mine posted something on social media where it was this picture of a man inside of a bronze bull. Like a big full-size bull, but made out of bronze, so hollow bronze. And he was inside of it, and there was a fire underneath it.
So they were cooking him.
In the bull. And so I was like, what is that? And so I looked it up, and it was called the Brazen bull. And the Brazen bull was created back in the day.
For them to have an iron bull that some welder, some blacksmith made.
Yeah, I'm talking about like 100 AD, 83 AD. The Brazen bull, I'll read something.
Did it look like the stock market bull?
Kinda, yeah, okay. But it was just kind of standing there with its head up. But yeah, it looked like that. You know what I mean? Here it is. The Brazen bull, also known as the bronze bull, was a torture and execution device designed in ancient Greece. The bull was said to be hollow and made entirely out of bronze with a door on the side. According to legends, the Brazen bull was designed in the form and size of an actual bull and had an acoustic apparatus that converted screams into the sound of a bull.
Wow, that's some technology for back in the day.
The condemned were locked inside the device, and a fire was set under it, heating the metal until the person inside was roasted to death.
Horrible, Ben. That sounds like something out of the movie Saw.
This instrument was associated with the name of the tyrant Phalaris. The head of the bull was designed with a system of tubes and stops so that the prisoner's screams were converted into the sounds like the bellowing of an infuriated bull. Phalaris is said to have commanded that the bull be designed in such a way that its smoke rose in spicy clouds of incense. According to legend, the bull was reopened after a body was charred. The victim's scorched bones then shone like jewels and were made into bracelets.
Now, is this a myth, or is this something that was an actual...
This is for real. This actually happened. And even after this Phalaris, who was a Greek ruler, even after his death, whereas he actually was roasted to death in the bull when he was overthrown.
So he got his.
He got his. But listen to this. Stories allege after finishing construction of the execution device, Perilaus. So Perilaus is the guy who made it for Phalaris. So
he's like a Da Vinci.
Yeah. Perilaus said to Phalaris, his screams will come to you through the pipes as the tenderest, most pathetic, most melodious of bellowings.
Talking about the ruler who was put into his creation.
No. So this was the guy who made it for Phalaris. Phalaris ordered this to be made.
And so the guy who made it said...
The guy who made it when he was delivering it was like, Your Highness, this is the finest bull. The screams will come to you in the most pathetic bellowing.
Which will make you orgasm over and over as you hear the bellow and smell the scent of rotting flesh.
So Perilaus, well, it was designed so that incense would burn too, so that when the smoke came out, it didn't smell like it smelled like incense. So Perilaus, who built it, believed he would receive a reward for his invention. Instead, Phalaris, who was disgusted by these words, ordered its horn sound system to be tested by Perilaus himself.
So,
tricking him into getting into the bull. When Perilaus entered, he was immediately locked in and the fire was set so that Phalaris could hear the sound of his screams.
He killed the creator.
On delivery.
Because he hated the way his verbiage sounded as he presented the masterpiece, the Brazen Bull.
What you asked for. I made a bull out of bronze, and
I
created a pipe system that I get in there, you get in there and scream as loud as you can, and it sounds like, sounds like a bull from the outside.
Did you know when he finished that, he was all like buffing it, making it all shiny before the presentation? He was like, I am the man.
Yeah.
Is that where the saying, no good deed goes unpunished? Because that right there is a prime example of what I guess you think of as a good deed.
Well, now listen to this.
Oh, it gets better.
Before Perilaus could die, Phalaris opened the door and took him away. After freeing him from the bull, Phalaris is then said to have taken Perilaus to the top of a hill and thrown him off.
So he didn't even let him die in it.
Didn't let him die in there. Pulled him out while he was like half roasted. Threw him off of a hill.
Oh, that's nice of him.
Phalaris himself, the ruler, is claimed to have been killed in the Brazen Bull when he was overthrown by Telemachus, the ancestor of Theron.
Why am I not... These names, they just...
Well, if you look at Greek history, I mean, these things happened like every couple years. If you stayed in power for like 10 or 15 years, you're a big dog, okay? I mean, like, most kings get their heads cut off. You know that saying? It's also a Coldplay song. It's a true saying that has...
Can you sing that for us?
No, I don't even like the song.
We were all yellow.
Yeah. This is a really interesting story, man.
Now, is this before the Colosseum, I'm taking it?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know when the Colosseum was built, but the last time that the Brazen Bull was used was AD 287, 1,800 years ago or so, right? It's 2023.
Yeah.
287. There's some interesting information on it, man. The Romans have been claimed to use the torture device to kill Christians, most notably Saint Eustace, who, according to Christian tradition, was roasted in a brazen bull with his wife and children by Emperor Hadrian.
So wait, you could put a whole family in this fucking thing?
I mean, it's as big as a bull, dude.
I guess.
Shove the people in there, close it, lock it, start the fire.
Dude,
and people would stand around and listen to the bull. So it would shake because people were,
burning to
frying, or whatever. Yeah, burning to death. So this Phalaris guy, he was the tyrant of Acragas, now Agrigento, in Sicily from approximately 570 to 554 BC. And here's a picture of it. See him shoving that guy.
Oh my God! It's almost like a grill.
Yeah,
it's like a fucking grill.
Yeah, they're just shoving him in there, getting ready to start the fire. And the thing is that once you're in there, you can't hear anything except all your screams and everything. It just sounds like the bull.
You can hear yourself screaming.
Yeah, but everyone on the outside, you see all the people that are crowded around.
Bellow, bull.
Dude, they were psycho back then. They were
bananas. They would root for it.
Oh yeah, this was like a big event. The whole town would probably come.
Yeah.
Watch somebody get roasted.
It'd be like stoning somebody or burning a witch at the stake.
Yeah, dude.
You'd have the whole mob mentality out there going, she's a witch, burn her at the stake.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was your first torture thing. What else did you discover on your journey of torture?
So there was a lot of different ones that I found that were really horrific.
We should do that to mass shooters in this country, don't you think?
Oh, dude.
Stick them in a fucking brazen bull. I'd celebrate that.
Let's go with the top 10 brutal ways to die by torture in the ancient world.
Okay.
Well, let's just say number 10 is crucifixion.
Okay, so we're all picturing at this moment Jesus.
Number 9, rat torture, eaten alive.
So how would they do that? They'd tie you up, I would imagine, to where you can't move. They'd probably shove your ass in a cave somewhere that's filled with rats.
Typically, a rat was placed inside a small cage positioned against the victim's abdomen. The cage was heated from the outside, either by a candle, flaming stick, or hot coals,
forcing the rat to try to get out of the cage,
causing the rat to become agitated. So how could it escape? By clawing its way into the only available soft surface. Quite quickly, the rat would gnaw its way into the victim's bowels, eliciting unbearable agony in the process. This technique effectively got information out of prisoners and played on their psyches, adding a psychological element to the torture.
Okay, that's disturbing.
Number 8, the rack, stretching the body.
I've seen this. I think everybody has seen this in movies. Braveheart, I believe, with Mel Gibson, when he was refusing to bow down or take the knee or whatever, they put him on that rack and they had like horses pull his body.
Exactly. Pull them all the way apart. They could stretch you just a little bit to get like some info out of you, or they could stretch you to the point where your muscles,
your torso would just rip off.
Well, they would stretch you to the point where once your muscles stretch out a certain point, they don't retract back together, and so they're you can't use them anymore. You just become like a freaking limp dog. Or they would do it where they would actually completely rip you apart. People who would come and watch, they would cheer for like the sounds when like a bone would pop or something like that. And if someone was sentenced to death on it, then they would be completely ripped apart. Otherwise, it could be part of a series of tortures. Some people were stretched to paralysis, basically, and then they were burned at the stake. In some cases, it was just a part of the deal. Number 7, keel hauling. And keel hauling is, it means to drag along the keel of a boat, which is what the torture method did. The sailor was stripped, tied, and suspended by a rope from the ship's mast with weights or chains attached to their legs. The rope was looped beneath the ship, and once the sailor was released, they were dragged under the keel. The fatality rate was practically 100%. If the person did not drown, they suffered severe head trauma from repeatedly smacking against the keel, as well as deep lacerations from the barnacles and other aquatic growth present on the hull.
So it wasn't like a long rope. You didn't have a stretch. You were tied close.
Yeah, so that you'd be tossed off the front of the boat and just dragged under it as it went. If you survived, they pulled you back on deck, and then you ultimately died from disease. Number 6 is the wheel. And the wheel's one that's really highly documented, man. And the wheel is something that has happened, as recent as like the 1300s, the 1400s. They would just tie you to a wheel and they'd just sit there and hit your body with a hammer or rocks.
It's almost like a cruise. It's almost like a cross. They're just tying you to a wheel.
Yeah, but they're using kind of like the spokes of the wheel to like take a rock and smash your arm.
Oh, gotcha.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's real morbid. We've gone to a deeper, darker place.
Number 5 is impalement, pierced straight through. So they'd take a huge spear and stick it from your bottom.
Your anus.
Yeah, all the way up through your throat. And then they'd tie you to it, post it into the ground, and you just hang there on it until you died. That one's pretty rowdy.
Yeah, it is.
The blood eagle, giving the victim wings. If the 6 other ancient world ways to die have not made you squirm yet, welcome to the barbaric practice of the blood eagle. Although it is highly debated whether this torture method was real or just literary invention, either way, a rather disturbed mind concocted it. The blood eagle ritual was first mentioned in the late Skadlic poetry. The victim would lie in a prone position and be kept alive as their back was sliced open, their ribs were detached from their spine, and their lungs pulled through the opening to form a pair of bloody wings. It is hard to imagine one staying conscious long enough for this to be completed. Nevertheless, if the Viking sagas are to be trusted, this technique has truly earned its spot as one of the most brutal, painful, and downright terrifying ways to die.
Okay, yeah, that sounds horrible.
Molten gold, scorched from the inside. So they take hot gold and just pour it down your throat.
And just burns and melts
Just
everything on the
cuts
inside.
holes right through you, man. Craziness.
And what number is that?
Number 3.
Okay.
Number 2, flaying, being skinned alive.
Ugh. And number 1,
And
ladies.
coming in at number 1, the Roman candle, the ancient world's ultimate torture method. Coming in at number 1, above all other brutal ways to die in the ancient world, is the Roman candle. Whether it's the execution style itself or the executioner who ordered it, this is bone-chilling on several fronts. History is filled with ruthless and psychotic figures, and the Roman ruler Nero is one of them. He hated Christians so much that he used them as human candles or torches for his garden parties. First, the victims were tied and nailed to tall stakes. Then, flammable liquid was poured over them before they were set alight. The fire started at the feet to prolong their suffering. Whether the Christians had rebelled against the state or not, this was a monstrous way to go. It reflects how barbaric punishments were in antiquity and how they were often born of man's vicious ego and thirst to dominate what he considered a lowlier populace.
The reason we went down this wormhole today is, I suppose, to just shed light on how barbaric and disgusting human beings have been to each other, are being to each other, and will be to each other for the remainder of eternity.
Yeah, something about the subject of torture is just so interesting. I don't know why. It's so intriguing to me.
It is.
You know what I mean?
And I agree. Not that I don't think we're getting off, like, her learning about it.
No, it's not getting off in a
Right.
good way.
Horror porn.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's like, just to imagine it is just unbelievable.
Can you imagine being in a time like that, where that ruler is the only law and order, but what they could get away with? America, these other countries, they do horrific shit. They cover up horrific shit. They mass murder and kill people all the time through, I guess, are the methods any worse? These just are a little bit more barbaric in the sense of...
Well, I mean, ISIS does stuff like this. I mean,
Iran, I imagine.
Yeah, in Iran and the Congo. I mean, these kinds of things still happen. They're just not written about or publicized because the way that the world is basically now. But certainly these things occur. And the part about it that is so chilling to me is that this is the way that people would win back in the day. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of these things were like, if you got overthrown, the guy that overthrew you would burn you in the brazen bull. It was like, how crazy can we get with this? It's pretty disturbing, man. It goes to show you, though, because when you get to reading into it, most of these methods that I've been reading about are based on the persecution of Christians,
right,
by the Roman Empire,
right,
and the Greeks, because they believed in the sun god and the ocean god and they believed in many different gods, and they had idols and worshipped idols. And Christians said, no, we're not worshiping idols. We're not worshiping you as the ruler. We worship God.
Right.
And God made you and God made me. Many of these executions were done at the attempt to get people to denounce Christianity. So you talk about like being brave and stuff like that. Imagine you're getting ready to get freaking put into the brazen bull. They say denounce Christianity. And you're like, no. I'm not doing it. I don't care. Throw me in the brazen bull.
Right. Light me like a wick and
God
candle.
is the truth. Throw me up as one of your party candles.
Give me anus to mouth with a spear.
Yeah, just spear me and put me out in the yard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I want to be a lawn ornament for your parties.
Yeah, so I mean, it just shows you like how far the human race has come in so many ways as far as freedom of speech, freedom of religion.
I mean, I guess we have evolved.
Significantly.
But then again, in some ways, you see evidence of, is there really a difference? I mean, like, it's a more packaged way of killing. It's more presentable and palatable to our society as it is right now. Because if the government did that and took a bunch of whatever you want to call it, puppets, and stuck them on the White House front lawn with, stakes through their ass and coming out their mouth so the president could have that as ornaments during his dinner party, well, that wouldn't be very palatable.
That's right.
So they're going to murder and kill in a slightly more covered up way of...
Nowadays, you can do it a lot more quietly. More popular to
make
do it
it
more
look
quietly.
Like an accident.
And there's always been war, like between countries. There's always been conflicts. Dan Carlin has an incredible podcast about history that is really interesting to listen to.
That's the dude with like the 4-hour episodes?
Yeah.
He knows his shit.
It's called Hardcore History.
I feel like he's like, when you listen to him, it's like when you go to Buckhead Church and hear Andy Stanley, how many hours did it take for him to prepare this sermon?
That's right.
Because it's so thought-provoking and so thought out that it's like, and he takes one little topic and he digs so fucking deep and and goes on for an hour and a half about one thing.
There are ways to kill people a lot more third party, basically. Like you have the United States, for example, is the greatest supporter of NATO. NATO pushes the boundaries toward Russia. Russia says, if you keep pushing us, we're going to attack Ukraine. NATO kept pushing, and then Russia attacked Ukraine.
Now we're arming Ukraine.
Yeah, exactly. And so there are a lot of different ways to look at this. And to me, there's no right side. I mean, it's just a part of the sickness of humanity, ultimately. Understanding these things geopolitical, if you really looked into both sides, technically, you could support either. You can find all of the human emotions on either side.
Right.
You can find all of the reasons that one side did one thing or why the other side did another.
And what's funny is, too, because while Vladimir Putin, I would say if you had to point at an evil, well, I mean, there again.
He's probably the wealthiest man in the world.
Well, right. But besides wealth, we talked about stupidity and we talked about evil.
Yeah.
So when you see Vladimir Putin, do you see evil? Or do you see a man that is sticking up for his country? Now, he was pushed into a corner and he gave, as we talked about, he gave warning after warning. If you keep going, this is what's going to happen.
That's right.
And it was pushed and NATO pushed and Ukraine kept going. Could have been handled through diplomacy, but it wasn't. And then he starts attacking. Are there war crimes there? Yeah, I would.
For sure.
Can't go and use rape and torture as a tactic. People.
So horrible torture methods are occurring right now. Horrible stuff. The interesting thing is just the direction that we're going with everything, because everything is a house of cards right now. And maybe it always has been. And maybe that's why such extreme measures are resorted to in order to hold on to power, because it is so fragile. I was talking to an investment banker this morning, speaking of all of these things with the banking contagion, right? And he literally said the banks work off of a 10 cap. And for those of you that don't know what that means, a 10 cap is a 10% capitalization rate. What that means is that for every dollar they have, it's lended out 10 times. So literally, if 10% or more of the people go into the bank to get their money, the bank's going to collapse. The number's 10%. The average deposit at the Silicon Valley Bank was $5 million. That's how much the average account was. So you got a lot of people lost a lot of money.
Well, didn't Biden come out and say that they were going to be able to get their money?
Yeah, so the government's ultimately gonna print the money and write the check.
Let's keep printing the money.
And so it goes back to printing money. But,
which devalues the dollar.
Which devalues the dollar. You know, when you look at these things from a zoomed out view, it's really interesting what you come up with. I don't know if Vladimir Putin, a lot of people say he is evil. A lot of people say the United States is evil. I was in Iraq for a year and a half. I didn't really see why we were there. I didn't really understand it. I don't understand why we're in a lot of places. I saw horrible things done to people. I saw people that had been killed in horrible ways. I talked to people whose families had been killed with missiles and bombs. You know, we talk about Vladimir Putin sending missiles to Ukraine and everybody's got Ukrainian flags up and all this kind of stuff. Dude, we're putting missiles in people's front door just like they did. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's going to wrap up today's episode of the ManFUzed Podcast. Hit us up at manfused.com. Join the show, 770-744-5227. As always, please share the show.